I'm here with my partner, Justin Minott,
What's going
and
on?
also with my good friend and colleague, I would say as well, coming to us from Colorado, Carter Phipps. Carter, great to have you here today.
Good to be here. Nice to see you, Dave. Nice to meet you, Justin.
This is great. Nice to meet you.
So we've had a really fun time off camera, so we'll just continue to party on camera. So Carter is
Hit record at the start.
Right, we could have. It was all gold, yeah.
So Carter just recently finished. Carter, we should just talk about the book you finished.
Yeah, super excited about it. It's called Conscious Leadership, and I'm co-authoring it with Steve McIntosh, who is my co-founder and collaborator in another project called the Institute for Cultural Evolution, which is a nonprofit sort of dedicated to the evolution of culture and in particular to our political culture, overcoming polarization, things like that. So,
yeah.
So Steve and I co-authored this book with John Mackey, who's the founder, people know him as the co-founder of Whole Foods and the current CEO of Whole Foods. Whole Foods is part of Amazon, but he's still there and still leading Whole Foods. And so this is sort of a sequel to Conscious Capitalism, a book that came out a few years ago and sort of started a whole movement about upgrading the kind of ethics of business and upgrading our whole experience of what capitalism is, what business is, what entrepreneurship is. And so this is a book about the leadership aspect of that. So we're super excited about it. It comes out in September, but it's on Amazon now, so people can pre-order.
Great. You'll autograph it for Justin and I?
Yeah, exactly. Virtually.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, we need a hand sanitized autograph, please. That would be
exactly.
That would be really great. So in the current coronavirus environment, there's a lot going on, and it feels like there are these major shifts in society. Do you think that there's an opportunity for conscious capitalism to arise on the other side of this, or what's your take on that?
Well, I hope so. But I think, moments like this are always, they're unexpected. I mean, it's fascinating to me because we have this moment where we're experiencing something that most of us, or almost everyone has never really, unless you live in some parts of Asia or maybe were, homosexual in the AIDS scare of the 80s or something. There's been a few cultural pockets that have experienced something like this. But for most of us, we've never experienced something like this in our lifetimes, even though it's a kind of an archetype of the human experience throughout history. I mean, this pandemics are part of deep in our DNA in a certain way. They've been happening for thousands and thousands of years. We've just never experienced them in our lifetime. So on one hand, it's this kind of deep archetypal moment. On the other hand, it's this kind of completely new thing that puts tremendous amount of stress on us as individuals and our systems as a culture and as nations. But I think, moments like this provide that impetus. They can create lots of opportunities for evolution. Someone I featured in a recent book I wrote a few years ago said stress creates evolution. And it doesn't always, it can. Moments of stress can spur us forward. They can create new opportunities. Necessity is the mother of invention. They force us to think in new ways, to do new things, to reorganize our lives, and they push us forward, but they can also break us down. Right. And so I think, we all have to kind of take these moments and try to find ways to move forward and to change in healthy ways and to kind of, and to change ourselves, but also to change things around us. And so I think they can be, but they don't necessarily.
What do you think is the difference between people who, how did you say it, like almost like fall apart or rise to a new level? What are some of the differentiators in there that have people going one way or the other? Because this is the crossroads that we're at right now.
Well, I think so much of this comes down to obviously certain, we have to try to be, resilient and anti-fragile, as Nassim Taleb would say. And I think, I think so much of it comes down to how we think about it and how we, so much of how we experience life is how we frame our lives. And for those of us who have the opportunity to, and some freedom and some economic, at least, wiggle room to think about this virus and to think about these effects of it in ways then it's sort of incumbent upon us to do everything we can to kind of find ways to thrive and move forward. Now, you say that realizing not everyone has those opportunities, you know?
Yes.
And for those people who don't have those opportunities, then it's incumbent upon some of us who do, I think, to also reach out and try to help in ways we can, and try to kind of be more community oriented and be more, you know, to bring that kind of the action, because, you know, that's going to help as well. So that's another way of moving forward at this time, is to in this era of distancing, to be closer, you know.
And so you have, I know from your previous book was Evolutionaries?
Evolutionaries, yeah. Evolutionaries.
Gosh, it's been so long since I read it. Great book. and autographed.
Oh, there we go.
But you have such a perspective of history and culture over the years. And I'm wondering if you can provide some perspective how this fits in, or what patterns you see, or having taken a longer view of human history.
Yeah, I mean, God, there's so much to say about that. But I mean, I do think, you know, moments like this is a once in a decade, you know, maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's once in a century. But I think for now, it's once in a decade moment. And those moments are like the great financial crisis, like the dot-com era, like the fall of the Berlin Wall. You know, these are moments where everything reorients and shifts. And so how is it going to reorient and shift? Well, we don't know exactly, but it's going to be up to, you know, 100,000 or 1 million little decisions that we all make. And so we all have a moment to kind of contribute to that, and with a different kind of leverage than we have in just the day-to-day of a normal month, a normal year, a normal decade. This is a moment where all those actions that we take have a little bit more impact. And so I think we can all think about it that way. We all have a little bit more leverage to move things forward, to change our own lives, to shift the lives around us, our families, our communities, our culture. You know, this is a moment where things are more fluid, and how they're going to end up on the other side, it depends on how we act. But I will say, you know, the other thing that happens inevitably, I've been watching my social media feeds, you know, it's a moment where everyone gets very excited, you know, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But they also, you know, they all get, you know, massive systemic change is coming, you know, and it's either going to be some huge breakthrough or some massive collapse that's often then going to lead to a huge breakthrough. And I think we have to be wary of what I call kind of collapse porn. You know, it's like the idea that all the systems are just about to collapse. Right. I think we have to be a little wary of that. And you know, I'm as someone who believes in evolution. I think unfortunately collapse and revolutions can be so disruptive; they can be very regressive. So This is a moment when more intensive evolution is possible, and I think that's how we should relate to it.
Well, and I think that lends to, I like that you use the word fluid. This fluid thing that is possible here, and evolution seems to lend itself more to this type of framework, because evolution is inherently, I mean, it can speed up, but it inherently is these small differences and these small morphings that over time lead to massive changes. And I think we're on the verge of a completely different society, but slowly, in the micro decisions, in how we treat each other and how we structure our businesses. What would you say are some of those micro changes?
You know, one of the things that, sorry.
No, go, that's great. Go, please.
No, I was just going to say, one of the things that prevents a lot of evolution or natural evolution can be over time when you have often very successful institutions like you have in this country, you know, relative to history. I know I have all kinds of complaints about other institutions at all kinds of levels, and everyone does. But relative to history, they're enormously successful. But a certain amount of inertia sets in over time with governmental institutions, business institutions, you know, this trend, and it just seems like you can't get any change through those institutional structures. Well, moments like this suddenly create all this slippage, all this fluidity, all this opportunity. Suddenly that inertia is broken, and you can create new things. And I think that's how to look on a moment like this. You know, it's an opportunity to move forward in a way you can't in previous moments.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
There's something you said earlier, Carter, which I feel, you know, it's interesting that we, in a way, we're like you in a different format, because we're just talking to people all the time. They're coming from all these different perspectives, and you start feeling these themes just starting to flesh out a bit. And one of the things that you mentioned just brought something into relief, which is that it's like it's almost like a magnification. Our decisions and choices are magnified. they're accelerated. They just seem to matter more. They actually have more. They're amplified. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So yeah, say a little bit more about that.
Well, for all those reasons, I just think that like you say, the moments like this, everyone's looking for, is like a lot of the tensions that were maybe built up, obviously technological change, just in simple ways of looking at our economy. I mean, you're going to see these massive shifts in how we organize our work lives. Just because people, you're 100 million people are getting used to working at home and thinking about their work in new ways. So that's going to change all kinds of things. And that's just one example, right? So you see all these kind of shifts and moves. But I think for our own, we rarely have moments of disruption. Just now speaking on a personal level or for each of us, we rarely have these moments. Now, I've been lucky because I work at home all day anyway, so my life hasn't changed that much.
Right.
So some of us are like that, but for many people, it's a different kind of moment, and it allows them to think about their life in a new way. Maybe they have a hobby they've been trying to do for 5 years and they've never been able to do it. Maybe they have a business they've been wanting to start for years and they've never been able to do it. Maybe they have a project they've been wanting to give time to and they haven't been able to do it. It's a moment to moments like this make you think about change, and it breaks our own inertia too. And I think that's a good thing. Now, obviously, moments like this there's suffering, and we shouldn't forget that. That's and that's part of what we have to do too, is take care of those who are suffering.
Now, there's an analogy that I was thinking of as you were talking about when you're in a race car and you are sliding towards a wall. The worst thing that you can do is actually look at the wall, like where you don't want to go. And when you were talking about social media and all this bad news and or maybe this very disruptive news that is coming out, that's kind of looking at the wall. The best thing you can do is look at where you want to go, and naturally your hands and everything will kind of just take you and veer you in the direction of what you want. So what is the world that you want? What do you want to see? Where do you want this to go on the other side of some of these shifts in culture? Because that's what you've been studying, that's what you've been writing about. What do you want on the other side? What do you hope the world looks like?
Well, I mean, we've been, the work I've been doing with the institute I founded is all about overcoming political polarization and trying to find ways for the country and the culture to evolve, essentially. And the thesis of that is that, we're more polarized as a culture and as a country than we've been for, at least a century, if not more, probably since the Civil War. And so how do you negotiate that kind of polarization? You can see it even in response to this. If you go on social media, you can see different sides of the political spectrum have very different responses to even how we should deal with this.
Yeah.
It's expression of different worldviews kind of clashing. And so, I don't have any illusions that some moment like this is going to solve those problems.
Sure.
But I do think this is a moment when it forces people to maybe reconsider some of those positions, when the stakes are high, when suddenly things seem more real than they usually do because of a moment like this. It forces people to reconsider their own positions, reconsider how they're relating to their fellow human beings, and maybe look past some of those worldview differences and see each other in a new light. Sure. And I do hope that I'm not under the illusion this is going to solve all those issues, but it may, on the margins, help us move forward or prepare the way for something else that will
open up the conversation.
Maybe it'll take a decade, but maybe it will be a push that will move us in a new direction, or at least move enough people in a new direction that it will make a difference.
Well, I think one poignant example is the idea of universal healthcare or any of these healthcare types of things, because for the first time, I certainly in my lifetime, it's not just my healthcare that matters. I'm only healthy in the extent that everyone around me is healthy.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, and people can argue about universal or whatever types of healthcare systems, but all of a sudden for me, everyone having a decent healthcare actually directly impacts my life. And I think that might be something that opens up the conversations to, I think, like you said, reconsider new ways of being together. that aren't so rooted in just political ideology. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's we finding a way to create one of our chapters in the new book is called Win-Win-Win, and it's about deal making and trying to find win-win solutions, but it's also trying to find solutions that aren't just good for me or the person who's on the other side of the table from me, but are also good for the community, are also good for the external people who are also affected by our business relationship. So win-win, but also win-win-win. Where the stakeholders in our venture also win, and finding ways to create those kinds of solutions, whether it's in business or in the nonprofit world or in government. Trying to work, not just to do better myself, or not just to win the deal or win the moment, but really trying to find win-win-win solutions. And I think when we start thinking in that framework, it like you said, it's like, okay, it's very important that other people win here, because in the long run, I need them to win. We all do better. And that kind of perspective, but sometimes you have to get out of a normal type of survival mode, or whatever it is that makes us think maybe more about ourselves, or just about the moment, or about whatever it may be. And it gets us out of that, and we start thinking about the health of the whole system.
It's interesting too, because just Carter and I have a lot of background together, and we've worked very intentionally in trying to bring this kind of mindset about. And it always felt like so much of a stretch. Like we should think this way. This is it better to think this way. When you have something like this, it's like it's back to your self-interest to think this way. You end up with a higher perspective, just acting out of your self-interest.
Yeah, right. That connection between the self-interest and the reality of over the long term, and that's another of our principles in the book is you really think long term. If you want to have a thriving business in a conscious way, you need to be able to think about the long term. So that kind of win-win-win solutions over the long term. I mean, that's what's maybe you won't do as well over the short term. Maybe you won't make that extra amount of profit. Maybe you'll maybe something else. Maybe you'll struggle a bit to do this. Maybe you'll have to whatever. But over the long term, that is going to endear you to your customers, to the people around you, to all your stakeholders, to the community. That's how if you can help everyone to thrive a little bit more, people are smart. They'll know this and they'll support you for it, and you'll do better.
Even if it costs you in the short term, right? That's the challenge. No, I said even if it costs you a bit in the short term.
Even if it costs you in the short term, and this is a great moment. I was listening to an earlier interview you did, and he was saying, sometimes in a moment like this, you have to hunker down and cut costs and do everything you can to survive. Ask people to give you a break, maybe on your rent and that's really important. And sometimes you have to do that for your own business sometimes. But the other side of it, if you're in a position where you do have that extra account, is a moment to be able to help people out. What an opportunity! What an incredible thing to be in a position at a moment like this to be able to help people out. And what kind of goodwill is created if you can help out if you can do something for your employees, for your other stakeholders in your business, or whatever it is. The goodwill that is created over the long term in a moment like this is 10x what it would be in a normal situation. So it's important not to forget that. That's a great thing. And what a better opportunity if we're so lucky to be in a fortunate position right now.
Yes. It is an opportunity. Yes.
Well, thank you. That's our mission statement. That's Justin's and my mission statement. And, so it's great to hear it articulated. And also I got to tell you, besides just thanks for doing this, and how much more we could talk about, is I just feel so much better knowing there's people like you who are in positions of influence.
Yes, doing this work. It's incredible.
I'm sure I'm trying to have influence. I appreciate your confidence.
I know you're a very, very humble person, but this is just really an expression of gratitude and exhale to know there are people like you who are in positions of influence who have this kind of wisdom and perspective at heart.
Awesome.
So thank you for bringing that to us, and thank you for bringing that into the world.
And so Conscious Leadership comes out in September of this year, 2020. How do we find your work?
Well, you can go to carterphipps.com, my website. And the best way for people to stay connected with me is to sign up for my newsletter, which comes out once a week, and just the latest kind of articles and ideas that I'm interested in sharing. Eventually there'll be a podcast with that. So it's called Thinking Ahead, and you can sign up for it on my website at carterphipps.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. And I just look forward to seeing all the beautiful work that you continue to do in the world. Keep it up.
All right, likewise.
Great to see you.